It's the amazing Rico Brogna podcast with your host, Evan Roberts.
And the damn game is over. The New York Mets win game number 1 of this 4-game series against the San Diego Padres. Game number 1 of this 10-game West Coast sort of central zone road trip. They finally beat the San Diego Padres on a late West Coast Thursday night into Friday morning. Welcome into an instant reaction edition of Rico Brogna. The Mets beat the Padres, and I got to tell you, man, there were a lot of those niblets early in this game that led me to not believe this was going to be the result. Think about the way this game started. This game starts all the way back at about 9:40 with Francisco Lindor roping a double into the right field corner. Great. Fantastic. Nothing to complain about there. And then Mark Vientos jumps on the very first pitch from Dylan Cease and rips a line drive into the left field corner. And before you're even comfortable, as you're still digesting the DNC, if you're watching that, the New York Mets have a 1-0 lead. And that's great. I mean, there's nothing to complain about, right? But I thought to myself, with a runner on second and nobody out, up 1-0, they're going to have to take advantage of all of these scoring opportunities because I don't know how they're going to hold the San Diego Padre offense down. I don't know how effective Luis Severino is going to be with his first start after his complete game performance. I don't know how good this bullpen will look, considering it's unlikely Jose Butto is going to be available. And what you then saw was just some awful, awful luck. Brandon Nimmo lines out. It turns into a 4-6 double play. Of course, Pete Alonso gets a hit right after that. And then Jesse Winker grounds out. So not that it's anybody's fault because Brandon Nimmo hit the ball like a rocket ship. But when the Mets only ended up with 1 run in the top of the first inning, despite making great contact against Dylan Cease, and despite starting the game with back-to-back doubles, I don't know. I had this empty feeling of, oh, man, they're going to have to take advantage of these opportunities. Before we continue, though, can I just get the bitching about Huascar Brazoban out of the way now? Let me just start with that before we go deeper into this game. The Mets have an 8-1 lead. They break the game open in the 9th inning. What a great feeling. I'm all excited. I committed to an instant reaction Rico in a close game. There was a possibility we were going to come on and bitch and moan about a loss. So when they break the game open with 5 runs in the top of the 9th inning, what a great feeling. I think even the most pessimistic Met fan had to say, all right, well, they're not going to blow a 7-run lead in the 9th inning. And instead of wasting Edwin Diaz in a 7-run game, they go to Huascar Brazoban, and this guy can't throw a freaking strike. You've got a huge lead. You're up by 7 runs in the 9th inning, and you're not throwing strikes to David Peralta? You're not throwing strikes to Luis Campusano? You're giving up an RBI hit to something McCoy? Mason McCoy? I mean, that was very tooth extraction-like in the bottom of the 9th inning. I was never worried about the game. Hoff and I were sitting here talking, actually, getting ready for the Rico. We weren't worried about the game. It was just annoying. It was just annoying that Huascar Brazoban, who there were moments where he looked good after the Mets first acquired him from the Fish Sticks, but now he's kind of moving like they're different tiers for relief pitchers. You've got your circle of trust, which really only features 2 guys, Jose Butto and Edwin Diaz. You have hey, that guy's been pitching pretty well, but he's not quite in the circle of trust. Phil Maton's kind of in that group. He's trying to get into the circle of trust. Then you've got the crappy, like the guys who suck. And then you've got I don't want that guy anywhere near a close game. And usually that spot is filled by Adam Ottavino. It's also known as the Mel Rojas Memorial spot in a bullpen. Huascar Brazoban was so crappy in the 9th inning, was so timid in the 9th inning. It took 35 pitches before Pete Alonso bailed him out by making a diving play that Huascar Brazoban is now moving into the Adam Ottavino. I can't see this guy in any kind of close game territory. Now, look, this wasn't a close game. It was 7-1 or 8-1 in the bottom of the 9th inning. So I guess this is the perfect time for him. But other than Huascar Brazoban causing a little bit of anguish at 1:45 in the morning late night baseball, there wasn't a lot to complain about. Now, they did miss that scoring opportunity in the first inning. They did miss a golden scoring opportunity in the third inning when Tyrone Taylor had a leadoff double. And they were pretty fortunate when they scored their 2 runs in the fourth inning to make a 1-0 game a 3-0 game. They were set up with second and third and 1 out, and they scored a run on a pass ball that Campusano just flat out missed. And they scored a run on an infield hit by Jeff McNeil, in which he was busting down the line. We call that the anti-Manny Machado. And that was able to garner the Mets a third run. So they were lacking that big hit early in this game. But luckily, they were able to find that in the ninth inning when they broke the game wide open. But they were at least able to get those 3 runs and give Luis Severino a 3-0 lead. And I got to hand it to Luis Severino. I wasn't necessarily sure what to expect against a good Padre lineup. I wasn't sure what to expect from Luis Severino coming off a performance in which he threw over 100 pitches and he's on regular rest. Like, who knows? I mean, this is uncharted territory for Luis Severino, as we've talked about. So I wasn't sure what to expect, but overall, I thought he pitched really well. I mean, he threw his slider a million times in this game, had great confidence in that pitch, and for the most part, was damn effective. He got himself in a little bit of trouble in the second inning, was able to get a big out on Campusano. He got himself into trouble in the third inning, got a huge strikeout of Drake Cronenworth, and they got Manny Machado to ground out. And look, he was very lucky in the fifth inning of this game. The fifth inning really turned out to be the most important inning of this baseball game. Because think about the scenario. You're up 3-0 with the way they scored those 3 runs as I described, and Sevy loses the strike zone. Still had that great confidence in his sweeper, though. And you really saw that in the Jurickson Profar at-bat. Padres have 2 on and nobody out. He falls behind Profar. I think it was 3-1. And he's still throwing that sweeper. Got Profar to swing and miss at the 3-1 sweeper. And then eventually walked him. Bases loaded. Nobody out. 3-0 game. Heart of the order coming up. And sometimes you need to be just a little bit lucky. And here's the mix of luck and good. The luck is that when Jake Cronenworth, with bases loaded, nobody out, hit a rocket that was 110 miles an hour off the bat, it was right at somebody. That's the luck part. The good part is Jose Iglesias. Because just because a ball is hit 110 miles per hour right at a fielder, don't mean the fielder's going to play it. Doesn't mean that guy's going to eat that crap up and turn a double play. And Jose Iglesias was able to do that. When you watch Jose Iglesias play second base, which we get to see, it feels like 3 times a week kind of on average, it's a reminder that, man, their best defensive alignment, I don't mean to take a shot at McNeil because it really isn't a shot at him. It's a compliment to Iglesias, but their best defensive alignment is when Iglesias is out there because that's a huge play. Bases loaded, nobody out. Jake Cronenworth hits that hot shot to second base. If that's knocked down and you just get an out, I mean, nice, but the double play was the inning-changing play. Because if you knock that down, and let's say you get an out at first base, a run is in, first and third, 1 out if you got the runner at second. Second and third if you got the runner at first, 1 out. And instead, Iglesias makes such a smooth play, gets it to Lindor, makes the good throw to first base, and they turn the clean 4-6-3 double play. Yes, a run scores. Now there's a runner on third, 2 outs. And you're an out away from getting through it. And Sevy was able to do it. He walked Manny Machado, allowed Manny Machado to steal second base. We saw that twice from Severino, basically giving second base to a Padre base runner. But it's not going to matter if you make the big pitch. And he made the big pitch, and he got Xander Bogaerts to ground out. 5 good innings from Luis Severino. I think on most outings you prefer more, but considering he's coming off a 9-inning performance, I think you would take 5 innings, 1 run, and say, thank you, sir, let me have another. But the real stunner in this game, the real stunner, the thing that makes you feel good when you put your head down on your pillow after a West Coast victory, is that with the Mets up 3-1, they need to get 12 outs from their bullpen. 12. Is there anybody in their right mind, I don't care how confident you are, how optimistic you are, who thought the Met bullpen was actually going to be able to get 12 outs without giving up that 3-1 lead. Because until the ninth inning, and obviously the ninth inning relaxed things, but it's not like the offense was tacking on runs. They were unable to do it. And again, had opportunities, but came up short. Did anybody think, knowing Budo was very unlikely to be available, and clearly he wasn't, Dednell Nunez not quite activated. That's going to happen on Friday night, tonight, technically. Did anybody think the Mets and Carlos Mendoza was somehow going to find a way to get 12 outs out of this bullpen? No shot. It doesn't mean they were definitely going to lose. It meant they're going to have to score some runs. There's no way this bullpen's going to hold up a 3-1 lead. And kudos all around. Let's start with Danny Young. Mendy did the absolute right thing in that spot. If Jose Budo is not going to be available, you know you're going to need to basically use 4 different arms to get these 12 outs, in all likelihood, because it's very unlikely any of the guys you're using is getting more than 3 outs. Very unlikely. And you also know that because of the usage of Edwin Diaz, including Edwin Diaz being used the night before, while Edwin will be available, you're probably not going to be able to be as aggressive with Edwin as maybe you can be in other scenarios where you're looking for a 5-out save or a 4-out save. So you know I'm going to need to use 4 different guys to get these outs. And so I'm thinking during one of the commercial breaks, no DVR, straight up live West Coast baseball, I'm thinking, all right, who are the 4 guys I'm using? Put Edwin aside. All right, who are the 3 guys I'm using? And when you see, well, he's got Jackson Merrill coming up. He's got David Peralta coming up. He's probably not going to pinch hit for him. It's still relatively early in the game. They got 2 right-handed bats on the bench. One's a backup catcher, Higashioka. The other one's Donovan Solano. Maybe uses Solano, but probably not. So you're looking at 2 left-hand hitters, and then you've got the catcher, Luis Camposano. It was a perfect spot to use the one lefty in this bullpen for now, because we'll see if he's on the roster come Friday with Dednell Nunez being activated. But maybe this performance convinces the Mets to hold on to him. Even though, remember this, if Danny Young is sent down, we are still only a week away from a rosters being expanded. So you will definitely see Danny Young again. But Danny Young, outstanding performance. Strikes out Jackson Merrill on a 3-2 pitch, freezes David Peralta on a 2-2 pitch, and gets Camposano to ground out. So Danny Young, 3 of the 12. Thank you. Who's next? Who's next? Reed Garrett's next. I don't necessarily know if Reed Garrett would have been next, because the bloom has very quickly come off the rose of Reed Garrett, mainly because Reed Garrett don't throw freaking strikes. And what does he do? He comes into the game and immediately walks the 9th place hitter. You can't do that. You can't do that when Luis Arise and Jurickson Profar and Jake Cronenworth and Manny Machado are coming up after that. So I didn't feel very good when Reed Garrett came into this game. I didn't feel very good when he missed with a 3-2 cutter to Mason McCoy. But stunner of all stuns, the Mets got Luis Arise out. Luis Arise has become a Met killer. You heard the numbers on the broadcast. If you didn't, I think he's got a career batting average against the Mets of about .450. It's absurd. They can't get him out. First 3 at-bats, what does he do? He's 2 for 3. And somehow, shockingly, the Mets turn another really important, smoothly turned double play, getting Luis Arise to bounce into another one of those 4-6-3 double plays. Reed Garrett gets the 3rd out. And it's like, whoa, 6 down, 6 to go. And they get it from Danny Young and Reed Garrett. And then we get to Phil Maton, who apparently I owe an apology to. I did receive an email after our last Rico. I think our last Rico was yesterday, basically saying, I'm sorry, I don't have the emails in front of me, basically saying, Evan, why are you dumping Phil Maton into the group of suckitude in this Met bullpen? That's not fair. Phil Maton may not be in the circle of trust, but he deserves more respect than being stuck into the mode of Reed Garrett and Adam Ottavino and Huascar Brazoban. And that gentleman is correct. Phil Maton has been better than that. In fact, Phil Maton was so good in this performance against the heart of the batting order, a grueling at-bat against Jake Cronenworth, with a 2-run lead. Phil Maton pitched a 1-2-3 inning. I think Phil Maton is this close, and I'm holding my two fingers together, this close to joining the circle of trust. He's not quite there. I'm sorry. Now, maybe for you he's there. Maybe for you, Hoff, he's there. He has not quite yet into the circle of trust. But this performance against San Diego, which was impressive. Now, granted, that 11-pitch at-bat with Cronenworth ended with a ball hit 390 feet to dead center field. But nevertheless, he got the out. And he got Manny Machado out. And he got Xander Bogaerts out. And I do think that after Budo and after Diaz, and we'll put Nunez aside for now, Phil Maton is their most reliable reliever after those three. And he delivered a very important 1-2-3 inning, and it allowed the Mets enough time to break the game open. Jeff McNeil feels back. He does. It feels like Jeff McNeil's getting multiple hits on a nightly basis. He had 3 in this game, including the base hit, and this should not be forgotten, that started the blow-up rally in the 9th inning. And that's an important blow-up rally. The Mets breaking the game open in the 9th inning is important for two reasons. Number one, break the game open makes the game easier to win, which they did. And number two, sit Edwin Diaz down. Now, all of a sudden, Edwin Diaz is available on Friday night. He wouldn't have been available if he pitched on Thursday in game 1 of this series. Not complaining about it, because obviously if you have a 3-1 lead in the 9th inning, game 1 of this huge huge road trip, of course you're going to use him. But breaking the game open allows you to now have Diaz available on Friday, maybe Friday and Saturday. So that rally in the 9th inning was very, very important. Tyrone Taylor got another base hit, his second hit of the game. Francisco Lindor ripped the base hit, got on base 3 times. Mark Vientos. I mean, we're going to run out of adjectives to describe this guy. Mark Vientos with the 2-run single. Remember, he had the RBI double in the first inning of this game that set the tone. And then after Nimmo grounds into the double play, Pete Alonso comes through with a clutch hit. He had 3 hits tonight. Jesse Winker comes through with an RBI double. He had 2 hits tonight. Jose Iglesias beats out yet another infield hit. It feels like he's had a million of those. He had 2 hits tonight. Everybody, I think, had multiple hits in this game, except for Francisco Alvarez, who had a very rough night offensively. Very rough night. Had the golden sombrero, believe it or not. 0 for 5 with 4 strikeouts. But that's okay. That's all right. Not everybody's going to get 2 hits tonight. But what an important way to start this series and to start this road trip. By taking game 1, by clinching the tiebreaker. I don't know if anybody cares about that. But if you are dreaming about catching the San Diego Padres, the Mets are now 4.5 games behind them. They have the tiebreaker. All they needed to do is win 1 game in this 4-game series to take the tiebreaker, and they got that. So a very, very important first game win for the Mets on this road trip. They get no help from the Phillies. The Phillies, I mean, I've said this since Joe Badingo taught me this at a young age. One of the early things Joe B taught me was, bro, when you root for a team you hate, they never help you. And he's right. I don't think the New York Knicks have ever won a game that's helped my basketball team. Ever. Never. They never help. And the Philadelphia Phillies, playing a beaten up, broken Atlanta Brave team, goes to Atlanta and they lose 2 out of 3. And they do it in just excruciating fashion. If you believe in this kind of stuff, I just want to give you the information. The Mets are 7.5 games back in the National League East, 8 games on the loss column. I do not take that very seriously. If the Phillies are playing a team not named Atlanta, then great. Let's see the Phillies lose. Like, for example, the Phillies are about to go to Kansas City. Sure, I'd like to see the Royals beat them. Why not? Doesn't hurt. Maybe the Mets can pull closer and closer and closer. But to me, playing the Atlanta Braves, it was a no-brainer. Let's go Phillies. And they did not help. They didn't help at all. And now the Braves are going to play a weekend series against the Washington Nationals. That's what makes this West Coast trip, at least the first part of it, so daunting. The fact that the Mets may not get any help, so they got to take care of their own damn business. They will face Joe Musgrove in game 2 of this series, and hopefully, not that it's going to even things up for what happened 2 years ago when he clearly had Vaseline on his ear. I think we all know that. I mean, everybody knows the guy was cheating. I don't know why Buck Showalter was criticized for merely trying to get him caught. All Buck did was call 911. That's all he did. The guy had Vaseline draped on his ear, and his spin rate was higher than ever. I mean, but let's pretend, it was fine. The Mets just couldn't hit. I mean, the Mets sucked. They choked, but we all know what Joe Musgrove was doing. I assume Joe Musgrove won't be doing that on a Friday night in San Diego. So hopefully the Mets pound him and get some revenge. But really, really good victory. I admit, when I saw the lineup coming into this game, I was just a tad bit perplexed by J.D. Martinez not being in the lineup, by Starling Marte not being in the lineup. But we do have to remind ourselves that as important as this game is, these games are, the Mets are in the midst of a stretch in which they're playing every single day, in which they just got on an airplane to go out west. They do have an off day Monday, which is very important. And J.D. Martinez and Starling Marte are two of those veterans, and we've seen it all year with J.D. We saw it with Marte prior to him getting hurt. They are being careful with. They're not running them out every day. So when I first saw the lineup, there was a level of, come on, JD's got to be out there. But when you remind yourself it's 162, it's a long-ass season. We're talking about two veteran players. You have to handle them with care. It makes a little bit more sense. What Mendy does against Musgrove will be very interesting, though, because JD should be back in the lineup. Marte should be back in the lineup. Do you take Jesse Winker out of the lineup coming off a 2-hit night and, of course, the game-winning home run a day earlier? How do you ever take Jose Iglesias out of the lineup? How do you ever take him out? He's so good defensively. Every ground ball he hits in the infield, basically he has a chance to beat out. He busts it on every single play. And speaking of busting it on every single play, am I the only one? I'm sure everybody did as well. How much did you love watching Gary Cohen just take nothing but shots at Manny Machado throughout the day? Wasn't that a lot of fun? Like every time Manny Machado would hit a ground out, he had two of them in this game. One early in the third inning when he came up with 2-1 and 2 out. He hits a ground ball to second base, and he's not running. And you heard Gary Cohen go, oh, look at Manny. He's running about 25%. He could not wait to take shots at him. By the way, let me give you some interesting Joe Musgrove stats, and then I'm going to go to sleep. Just to get ahead of this, Jose Iglesias needs to play in game 2 of this series, not only because of his defense, not only because of the infield hits we talked about. Jose Iglesias, in his career against Joe Musgrove, 6 for 15 with a home run. That's a 400 batting average. Harrison Bader, 1 for 11. Tyrone Taylor, not enough sample size. Brandon Nimmo, 0 for 12. Maybe you sit Nimmo. It's not the craziest thing in the world. Brandon did have a base hit in this game, but he also grounded into a double play, lined into a double play. Yeah, I don't go crazy about head-to-head numbers, but there are certain times where you got to look at it, especially when there's a decent sample size. I think that's enough of a sample size to say, I'm going to play Jose Iglesias. So I think what I would do is I got Marte in right. I would DH JD. I'd have McNeil in left. And now I got to decide between Tyrone Taylor, Brandon Nimmo, or Harrison Bader for center field. I gave you Nimmo's numbers against Musgrove, 0 for 12. Bader's 1 for 11. Taylor's 0 for 3. Taylor's coming off a 2-hit game. You know what? Screw it. Let's go based on performance. Tyrone Taylor plays center. Jeff McNeil plays left. Marte plays right. JD DHs. Iglesias plays second base. That's what I would do. Do I believe Mendy's going to do any of this stuff? Probably not. But that's how I would line it up for game 2 of this series. But great game 1 victory. Wonderful start to this series. And let's keep it going. Thank you very much for listening, downloading, subscribing, whatever the hell you did, to a late night West Coast instant reaction victory edition of Rico Brogna.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rico Brogna podcast. It's amazing, isn't it? Make sure you download it now to keep it on you at all times.